Good day, friends. Welcome to WordofGord, OBEJournal 2018. And I think it's either number 9 or number 10, I'm not sure. But we'll get that sorted out. I'd like to continue with the theme of angelic presences. After the last encounter a few days ago, I recalled this book, channeled book from 1913, Letters from the Light by Elsa Barker, a classic in automatic writing literature, I would say. And I have read from it before in the After Folks and the Afterlife series. Did I say average folks? Anyway, in chapter 34 of this book, the person who is communicating, Judge Hatch, focuses on what he calls the beautiful being. And it evokes some of the qualities that the angelic presence spoke of to us a couple of days ago, a couple of nights ago. Still sort of dark here, so about 5:30 in the morning. So allow me to unfold this one for you. The beautiful being. Yes, I have seen angels, and if by angels you mean spiritual beings who have never dwelt as men upon earth. As man is to a rock, so is an angel to a man in vividness of life. If we ever experienced that state of etheric joy, we have lost it through long association with matter. Can we ever regain it? Perhaps. The event is in our hand. Shall I tell you of one whom I call the beautiful being? If it has a name in heaven, I have not heard it. Is the beautiful being man or woman? Sometimes it seems to be one, sometimes the other. There is a mystery here which I cannot fathom. One night I seemed to be reclining upon a moonbeam, which means that the poet which dwells in all men was awake in me. I seemed to be reclining upon a moonbeam, and ecstasy filled my heart. For the moment I had escaped the clutches of time, and was living in that etheric quietude, which is merely the activity of rapture raised to the last degree. I must have been enjoying a foretaste of that paradoxical state which the wise ones of the East call nirvana. I was vividly conscious of the moonbeam and of myself, and in myself seemed to be everything else in the universe. It was the nearest I ever came to a realization of that supreme declaration, I am. The past and the future seemed equally present in the moment. Had a voice whispered that it was yesterday, I should have acquiesced in the assertion. Had I been told that it was a million years hence, I should have also been assertive. But whether it was really yesterday or a million years hence mattered not in the least. Perhaps the beautiful being only comes to those for whom the moment and eternity are one. I heard a voice say, "Brother, it is I." There was no question in my mind as to who had spoken. "It is I" can only be uttered in such a voice by one whose individuality is so vast as to be almost universal. One who has dipped in the ocean of the all, yet who knows the minute by reason of its own inclusiveness. Ah, that's nice. Standing before me was the beautiful being, radiant in its own light. Had it been less lovely, I might have gasped with wonder. But the very perfection of its form and presence diffused an atmosphere of calm. I marveled not, because the state of my consciousness was marvel. I was lifted so far above the commonplace that I had no standard by which to measure the experience of that moment. Imagine youth immortalized, the fleeting made eternal. Imagine the bloom of a child's face and the eyes of the ages of knowledge. Imagine the brilliancy of 1,000 lives concentrated in those eyes, and the smile upon the lips of a love so pure that it asks no answering love from those it smiles upon. That is unconditional, isn't it? But the language of earth cannot describe the unearthly, nor could the understanding of man grasp in a moment those joys which the beautiful being revealed to me in that hour of supreme life. For the possibilities of existence have been widened for me. The meanings of the soul have deepened. Those who behold the beautiful being are never the same again as they were before. They may forget for a time and lose in the business of living the magic of that presence. But whenever they do remember, they are caught up again on the wings of the former rapture. It may happen to one who is living on earth. It may happen to one in the spaces between the stars, but the experience must be the same when it comes to all, for only to one in the state in which it dwells could the beautiful being reveal itself at all. Now, he follows that with what seems to be something channeled by him, and then channeled through Elsa Barker, and it's called The Song of the Beautiful Being. When you hear a rustling in the air, listen again. There may be something there. When you feel a warmth mysterious and lovely in the heart, there may be something there, something sent to you from a warm and lovely source. When a joy unknown fills your being and your soul goes out, towards some loved mystery, you know not where, know that the mystery itself is reaching toward you with warm and loving, though invisible arms. We who live in the invisible are not invisible to each other. There are tender colors here and exquisite forms, and the eye gloats on beauty never seen upon the earth. Oh, the joy of simple life, to be and to sing in your soul all day, as the bird sings to its mate. For you are singing to your mate whenever your soul sings. Did you fancy it was only the springtime that thrilled you and moved you to listen to the rustling of wings? The springtime of the heart is all time, and the autumn may never come. Listen when the lark sings, he sings to you. When the waters sing, they sing to you. As your heart rejoices, there is always another heart somewhere that responds, and the soul of the listening heavens grows glad with the mother joy. I am glad to be here. I am glad to be there. There is beauty wherever I go. Can you guess the reason, children of earth? Come out and play with me in the daisy fields of space. I will wait for you at the corner where the four winds meet. You will not lose your way if you follow the gloom at the end of the garden of hope. There is music also beyond the roar of the earth as it swishes through space. There is music in keys unknown to the duller ears of the earth, and harmonies whose chords are souls attuned to each other. Listen, do you hear them? Oh, the ears are made for hearing, and the eyes are made for seeing, and the heart is made for loving. The hours go by and leave no mark, and the years are as sylphs that dance on the air and leave no footprints. and the centuries march solemn and slow. But we smile, for joy is also in the solemn tread of the centuries. Joy, joy is everywhere. It is for you and not for me, and for you as much as for me. Will you meet me out where the four winds meet? Ah, the beautiful being. Chapter 34 of Elsa Barker's Letters from the Light. I thought that was more than appropriate. I hope you did too. The joy of the centuries' slow tread that the being mentioned and harmonized with. That is definitely something that I ponder on myself. We think, or we experience the moments of our lives, we don't think about them. We experience the hours of the day. We experience the days of the week. We watch as people go through their life paths. As when we are young, we watch our grandparents age and pass and think over their, the journey of their lives. And as other friends, family, acquaintances pass through illness or quote-unquote accident, we ponder the significance of that, and some wind up feeling that it's pointless, that it's an abysmal sham of suffering, and they cleave towards the sort of, anger at God that results in atheism, or at the very least agnosticism. They become materialist, they become scientific, they embrace humanism, trying to find the divinity in themselves, which is not a bad thing, not at all. But they limit that divinity to that space between birth and death on this plane. And while there are arguments for, man can be good and moral and creative and compassionate and law-abiding without the threat of punishment in the afterlife, or the rewards of being good. That is a valid argument, shifting the balance of responsibility onto the individual's shoulders. And I would not dispute it. I would only point out its limited nature. As I said in one of my books, we have to confront our immortality. Not just our mortality. And in fact, the confronting our mortality, our personal mortality, is really the first step towards confronting one's immortality. That is a heavier burden. You take responsibility for your past lives and your karma as well. That's what you're doing in this little chapter of the big book. That's essentially what it is, a little chapter in a big book. This life is pivotal in the progression of the plot, in the unfolding of the narrative, but it is not as all-embracingly important as we like to think, as we live it. There are always more chances to rectify whatever you perceive or later perceive as a mistake. And I would argue that things that you perceive as mistakes now and turn into regrets in the long haul of eternity might not seem like mistakes at all. But if they do, you have plenty of time to readjust. The slow tread of the centuries, yes. It does seem that way when you look back through what we, know and understand of as history. And the recitation of wars, plagues, suffering, general suffering of the common man, the peasant. The centuries can seem more trouble than they're worth. I agree. And I quite often feel that way myself. It's easy studying history to feel that way. The rise and fall of cultures, civilizations, religions, political systems, a cursory examination can make it all seem rather foolish and pointless, because initially all one sees is the hopeless, inevitable collapse of previous efforts at building and rebuilding. But if one looks deeper or meditates into a deeper, more embracing vision of what we think of as history, one can see a system of learning, a system of embracing what we would rather deny as we try out different roles in different societies and families and epochs. We come to understand what we couldn't accept before. Let me reference that old phrase people will use between cultures: walk a mile in my shoes and you will understand who I am and what I have done. And that is very true. You walk a mile in that other character's shoes, the character that you might have seen as a villain in your life or life generally, you will come to understand why they chose what they chose. You may not accept it, but you understand it. And if you're thinking, God, there's a lot of incredibly destructive, psychopathic behavior around us, and some of it's extremely hard to understand, never mind accept. I agree. Psychopathic, sociopathic behavior where people realize their ambitions with complete ruthlessness and the charm of cunning, always at the expense of others, is completely unsociable. It's the worst kind of unsociability imaginable. But it exists as a path of learning. And all those souls that choose that path do learn eventually that it's not, that it's really no more than a dead-end alley. The creativity of the cunning planning that goes into realizing their ambitious ambitions so ruthlessly leads only to the dead end of the ego, fulfilling the ego with its paltry ambitions. And but they have to work through the initial attraction, the initial sense of victory over others and over forces, if you like. So, certainly one can look at history, I agree, as a recitation of mad adventures orchestrated by those who seem, in retrospect, sociopathic, psychopathic, egotistical. I want to rule the world people. I've just purchased Oliver Stone's his final go at re-editing his epic Alexander the Great, and for many cursory examinations of history, he can be seen as the ambitious, ruthless conqueror running the world as it was known then, in a few years of mad, intense battle, and then dying quite young. And so I was thinking of these matters recently, and it has been put forward in occult and esoteric teachings that one of the purposes served by these world conquerors is to an attempt to unify the consciousness of those who are conquered with the conquerors, so that everyone, well, a good percentage of everyone incarnate, falls into the same, how shall we say, cultural headspace, and moves toward a sense of unity that goes far beyond tribalism. Although it's an attempt, but you can see how the tribalism yet survives under the yoke of the empire. The tribalism, the nationalism, the internal pride. Think of any empire, Alexander's, the Roman, the Spanish, the British, the currently American one. You can see the tribes and the nations under that yoke surviving with their pride intact after the initial defeat, reestablishing their consciousness of their tribe and the pride in their culture. There's always seems to be a period of repression after the conquering, but it doesn't last forever. Well, as we say, nothing lasts forever except eternity. And eternity is that eternally changing theater show of manifestation. And when I say manifestation, I mean everything that manifests. The products of human life, human behavior, human creativity, and the products of animal life, mineral life, the products of the manifestation of elemental beings, the fairies, the angels, the devas. It's an eternally morphing manifestation. And one could certainly argue that there was joy in that. Once you back off from your personal concerns, as we do in meditation, and just survey the endlessly surprising patterns of behavior and manifestation. The unfolding drama, the clown show, of court jesters, which we see running some countries these days. The emperors without any clothes, hoisting their ego over their nation, promising this, that, and the other. The slow tread of the centuries. From the point of view of the higher self, the monad, as we've discussed before, it's the whole notion of time is really sort of meaningless. That slow tread can be a bunch of flashing images that whip by in seconds. Higher self can look at its manifestations, its little divine sparks from the eternal fire of consciousness in ancient times, quote unquote ancient times, Greece, Rome, Egypt, even farther back, Atlantis and Lemuria. And then it can look with virtually the flick of a switch to medieval times, Renaissance times. Now, it's for higher self, as I believe I used the image in my first book, Eternal Life and How to Enjoy It, is you're sitting in front of a bank of TV screens and you can focus on any one of them, as higher self does, and see how that particular journey is unfolding. And as that particular incarnate soul reaps the rewards of its ignorance, its naivety, its fearful ambition, its love and compassion and sympathy, higher self can do all that at any moment, and often does so. And you can, and you certainly can do it in meditation, or as we as incarnate beings on the inner journey of understanding, you can do it. And not only can you examine the parade of incarnate lives, but the time-out parade of our experiences in spirit between lives. For they are lives too. They're no less a life than this one. In fact, many would argue that they're much more multidimensional because of the freedoms and unleashed creativity of thought in the spirit worlds. All that makes up the passing parade of manifestation. And as many ask me by email and whatnot, what's the point of coming back? If it's so wonderful in spirit, as it is, so joyful and endlessly creative, because one can manifest one's thoughts and one's desires in a marvelously creative fashion. Well, I think one wants, first of all, there's karma. You have to work on your karma, the mistakes you made, the shit you pulled the last time around, maybe not the last time, maybe several last times. You have to try and see the other side of the coin, see those who suffered under your selfishness, or reignite the joy of previous relationships. We challenge ourselves by coming here. And while we're in the midst of that challenge, which may manifest as suffering and or loneliness or poverty or illness, we wonder why on earth we would have chosen this. It is such a, as we used to say, total bummer that we think, what on earth are we doing this for? This is a waste. And you know, I've been through that myself. I've been ill a year or so ago, And I did question the whole point of it. I did come to some answers. I did feel that I had to confront my fear of pain. I don't have a fear of death, but I did retain a fear of pain from my childhood in this life, I think. And I had to confront it and survive it. It was quite a painful experience. So I speak of where I know. So this notion of, why do we come back, which people are always asking me. I get many emails about this over the years. That's essentially the answer. We come back because we've karma to work on. We wish fresh experience in a new world. Because, society evolved slowly hundreds of years ago, and right now it falls much more quickly. Things are speeding up, as we've all noticed, and there are fresh experiences to be had. There are significantly different than 100, 200, 500 years ago. There's psychological mechanisms at play. You can be vain, arrogant, prideful, compassionate, sympathetic, merciful in any life, no matter what role you're playing. I think that's obvious. But the roles themselves are important to understand the meaning of being rich, poor, fat, thin, ambitious, timid. You know, it is. You learn by walking in those shoes, and maybe you think you will come back and think, well, I can be ambitious without being ruthless. They often go hand in hand, even to this very moment. But it is possible to be creatively ambitious and not be ruthless, to care for those that your ambition affects. And many are in this world now experiencing that because they have been ruthless in the past. That's just one lesson one can learn, and why one comes back. And just as I say, the karma, the other souls that you have incarnated with in the past, they want to be with you again. They say, be my lover, be my brother, be my business partner, be my friend. And in some cases, be my enemy, because I need you to badger me into more creative, aggressive action, because I've been much too timid. And one will take on that role if one is brave enough. And you see it happening. And one question that arises with New Age facilitators and researchers like myself is we observe bad behavior in others and think, did they sign on for that role before being born and are actually being quite heroic? Or are they falling into it as a pattern, a rut from previous lives? This comes up mainly in the books of past life regression, where people ponder these matters. When a soul is being cruel, heartless to one other or many others, is that them taking on a role consciously or falling into a pattern unconsciously? And there's no quick answer to that, because both situations manifest on a regular basis. And as I say with conspiracy theory, each case has to be examined one by one. There is no grand overriding theory that you can slap on the whole thing. It just is never that simple. And one can examine these things for years and come to the end of the seeming end of one's examination and think, well, in some cases it's this, in some cases it's that. And that's about as far as you can get. On the inner journey, there is always more mystery to uncover and explicate. It never ends. And it never ends on the astral plane either after death, quote unquote death. There are more mysteries there. Not mysteries that necessarily cause you, shall we say, suffering, as one can suffer here. And I think of elementary suffering, like these endless fires and floods that people seem to be experiencing around the world every year. People lose their homes through fire and flood. And it's very sort of biblical in its manifestation, And it makes me realize, some things never change. And despite our technical and technological control, we're ever so clever these days, but can we stop fires and floods? I wonder. We can certainly phone each other and say, hey, Mom in Australia, my house is burning down here in Canada, and she'll know in, 2 minutes. But can we stop the fire? Can we stop the flood? Cell phones are not capable of that sort of thing. So I find that an intriguing paradox. And again, something different that you couldn't have experienced even 50 years ago, never mind 100 or 200. Interesting to me. All these things are fascinating. And I think as you ask and ponder on these matters, that would be my maybe not final answer, but answer for now. We are fascinated by the unfolding processes of life. And finally, after our holiday in heaven, as one book referred to it, we come back. We re-enter the fray, as we do every morning when we get out of bed, as I did when I got out of bed. I'm not having much of a fray today. It's more of a pleasure day today, but that is what we do every morning. We re-enter the fray of life on the physical plane, just as we do at the birth of every incarnation. There are many similarities. And pondering the comparison of those two, birthing yourself into physical life in a new incarnation and birthing yourself into a new day at dawn or a little afterwards, ponder on that and have a little quick blast of cosmic consciousness. Really, it can be achieved. And it's quite a wonderful little vision. And with that nattering on, I will bid you farewell and rejoin you fairly soon with yet another episode of OBE Journal 2018.